Alright, today we're looking at graphing, secant, and cosecant. Very, very similar to graphing sine and cosine. Why do you think they're very similar? They're reciprocals of each other. Okay, so we're going to keep that in mind. So graphing sine, or secant and cosecant, very similar to graphing sine and cosine. Okay? And you're going to do everything exactly the same except for when you actually draw the graph at the very end. So our dots, just like we did with sine and cosine, we're going to get the dots the exact same way with secant and cosecant. So what is secant going to go with? Sine or cosine? It's going to go with cosine, and cosecant is going to go with sine. So we're going to start out this first example as if we were graphing cosine. So I want my amplitude. What's the amplitude of this one? My amplitude is 3. And what's my period? 4 pi over 3. Any questions on where we got 4 pi over 3 from? Alright, so I want to mark my period next. How many spaces is 4 pi over 3 going to be? It's going to be 8 spaces. So half of 8 is 4, and half of 4 is 2. So there's that. That's my favorite period. I like 4 pi over 3. It's an easy one to do. Alright, so what did we say secant was related to? Cosine. So where are cosine start and stops? At the amplitude. So in this case it's going to be at 3. So at 3 and at 3. Alright, then I finished getting the rest of my dots. So from the start, where does my next dot need to be as I move to the right? Middle. The next one needs to be a low. We're back to the middle, and then we've got a high. Now, here's something I want you to do whenever you're graphing secant or cosecant. Your dots on the left and your last dot on the right, we always want those dots to be in the middle. So keep that in mind. So on the left side, I'm going to put one more. That way my last dot is in the middle. And then on the right side, I'm going to go until I get my 9th dot, and it should be in the middle as well. So I go 2 more, gives me a middle. I go 2 more, gives me a low. And then I go 2 more, gives me a middle. And here in a second, you'll understand why I want the last dot to be in the middle. So I went in, I got all my dots just as if I was doing cosine. Now, once you get to the dots, that's when it stops being like cosine. Now we're ready to graph it, and the graph of secant is going to be different. How did you say secant was related to cosine?
It's the reciprocal.
They're reciprocal. So, what are my values right here on these 5 dots on the x-axis for cosine? What are my y values?
0.
0. What is the reciprocal of 0? Undefined. What does undefined look like on a graph?
Like now,
It could be an open circle, but that's not what it is in this case. What's my other option? What does undefined look like? Starts with an A.
asymptote.
Asymptote. Okay? So each one of these spots where I am 0 is going to turn into an asymptote. Then the dots, now what has to happen as I approach an asymptote? What are my only 2 options? It's got to go up or down, okay? And what happens is these dots on the top, it's going to go up on each side and form a parabolic shape. And on the dots on the bottom, they're going to go down on each side. So dots on the top go up, dots on the bottom go down.
So you want to put the arrows on each.
Yeah, the arrow needs to have arrows. And that's all there is. That's the only difference between graphing sine, cosine, and secant and cosecant. The dots are exactly the same. And once I have my dots, my middle dots turn into asymptotes. The dots above give me curves going up. The dots below give me curves going down. That's all there is to graphing secant and cosecant. Let's try another one. Let's jump to a different one, because we ended up being able to do this in only about 3 problems. Let's jump to number 4. All right, number 4. I have y equals 4 cosecant of 3x minus pi over 2. So what is my amplitude in this case? 4. The period? 2 pi over 3. Okay, what about a shift?
Pi over 6.
How much?
Pi over 6.
Pi over 6. Which direction?
That way.
Pi over 6 to the right. How many marks is pi over 6 going to be? It's going to be 1 period mark. All right, so let's mark the bottom. So I'm at 0, and my period is 2 pi over 3. How many spaces is 2 pi over 3? 4. So half of 4 is 2, half of 2 is 1. There it is. Now, what is cosecant related to? Sine. Where are sines start and stop? Origin. Now, this has a shift, so that means I just want to put marks to where I'm at. And then I need to move those, how much? 1 period mark. So 1 period mark to the right. There's that. So from my start, as I move to the right, what does the next dot need to be? Up. It needs to be up at 4. The next dot needs to be at the x-axis. The next one needs to be down at 4. And then we're back to the x-axis. This one's pretty easy because each mark is 1 apart. So the next one needs to be up at 4, back to the x-axis, down at 4, back to the x-axis. That should give me 9. Christian, what do I want to do next?
Would you make your asymptotes?
I need to put my asymptotes in there. Good. And my asymptotes are where the middle dots are at. So the middle dots get asymptotes.
You still
9 dots. Okay, and remember, I want the first dot and the last dot to be where? On the middle. Okay, why do I want that? Because I want the asymptote to be on the ends. That's why I want a middle dot. Okay, then the dots above get curves going up. The dots below get curves going down. So how many ups and downs do you need to have 2 periods? You need 2 ups and 2 downs. Rachel?
If you had a negative somewhere in there, would that change the direction? Like would your top dot go down?
Your top dot would be a bottom dot instead. All right, let's do one more. I think I want to do number 8. Is there 8 or 6? 6. Sorry. Let's do 6. All right, y equals 2 cosecant of 6 over 5x minus 3 pi over 2. All right, Reagan, what's my amplitude?
1.
The amplitude is 1. Bree, what's my period?
5 pi over 3.
5 pi over 3, very good. And AJ, what are my shifts?
Pi over 5.
12 pi over 5. You flipped the wrong thing. I gotta flip this and then multiply times that.
15 pi over 12.
15 pi over 12, but that will reduce. To how much? 5 pi over 4. And I've also got a vertical, which is up 2. Alright, so let's get the period marks. 5 pi over 3 is going to be how many spaces? 10. So 10 spaces. Half of 10 is 5. Half of 5 is 2.5. All right. Colleen, what do I do next? My original start and stop. So since this is cosecant, cosecant is related to sine, and sine's original start and stops are where? On the x-axis. So there and there are my original start and stop. Kaya, this one has a vertical shift, so what else do I need for since it has a vertical shift? I need a new x-axis at 2. Okay, so now that I've got my period marks, I've got my original start and stop, I've got my new x-axis, now I'm ready to move it. So Lauren, how do I want to move my original start and stop?
You do it right, 5 pi over 4.
And how many period marks is that going to be?
1.5 times 5.
You're thinking about it too hard.
Yeah, I
2.5.
am.
How many period marks is it going to be?
1. I don't know.
3.
3.
Remember, you look at this number right here. That number tells you how many period marks. That's 3 period marks. Remember, 3 pi over 2 is 3 period marks. Pi over 2 is 1, and pi is 2. So I'm going to move to the right 3 period marks and then up 2. So this thing is going from here all the way to here and then up 2. So there is my start. How many spaces over do I need to go to get to my stop? 10. Why is it 10, Kaylee?
Because your period is 10.
Because my period is 10, so let's do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's where I've got to stop. Okay, so from my start, as I move to the right, what does my next dot need to be? Do I need to go up or down?
Up.
I need to go up 1. So up 1. I go 2.5 more, puts me back on the middle. I go 2.5 more, puts me at the bottom. So there's 5. I need 4 more going to the left. So the next one on the left has to be a low. The next one on the left has to be a middle. The next one has to be a high. And my last one needs to be a middle. Nick, what do I want to do next?
Next one. Draw the asymptotes.
Draw the asymptotes. Where are the which dots need the asymptotes?
The ones on y-2.
Okay, the ones on the new x-axis. Okay, then my dots on the top need curves going up. The dots on the bottom need curves going down. There it is. So if I'm graphing secant and cosecant, I get my dots just as if I was graphing what? Sine and cosine, and then once I have my dots, what do I do next? Mark the asymptotes on the middle dots, and then my dots that are above get curves going up, my dots that are below get curves going down. That's all there is to it. What dots do I get for secant? What does secant go with? Cosine. So secant needs cosine dots, and cosecant needs sine dots. Now, here's something that happens quite often whenever somebody's graphing secant and cosecant. They will get the dots, and then what do you think they'll do after they get the dots? They won't do the asymptotes, they'll just give the curve like sine and cosine. Make sure when you're doing secant and cosecant, you understand that the graph has to have what? Asymptotes and curves going up and curves going down. Okay? Of the 6 trig functions, 4 of them are going to have asymptotes. There's only 2 that don't have asymptotes. What are the only 2 that won't have asymptotes? Sine and cosine are the only two that don't have asymptotes. Everything else is going to have an asymptote. Okay?